Morning, Gamecock fans. Today is Wednesday, June 11th, the year of our Lord 2025, and you are listening to Coffee with Jay-Z Shurburtt. Appreciate you, fine people, joining me this morning to talk Gamecock football each and every Monday through Friday. No coffee on Friday, by the way. There's no official visit weekend this weekend, so nothing to really preview. If there's some breaking news, recruiting wise or other, we'll pop in with something. Yours truly has a garage sale to do. Also, there's going to be some days next week and a little bit of the next for traveling purposes because I'll be on the road going to Columbia for the wing off. And again, want to invite you guys and gals out for the wing off. It is Saturday, June 21st from 4 to 8 p.m. at CB90 Bar and Grill on the corner of Hardin and Green in Columbia's 5 Points District. Bar's owned by Steve Tannehill, my friend Jeff, Cox by 90. And it is a great time. We had a great time there last year. It's going to be even bigger this year. It is a free event. If you go and follow Cocky Hospitality or Cox by 90 on Twitter and go back through their, or X, go back through their archives, and they have a link for an Eventbrite where you can RSVP and you get a free raffle ticket. So we're going to have a lot of fun. It's always a lot of fun. Come out there, meet me, meet my better half who will be going with me. She did not get to go last year because it was our oldest stepson's graduation party weekend. But certainly she'll be with me this time, and looking forward to getting down to Columbia in the nice, lovely humidity. And I'm not complaining. I swore once I left, I'd never complain about it again. So it'll be a lot of fun, and a lot of student athletes will be out there. There's a band afterward at Breakers Next Door, Nashville recording artist, who's apparently pretty good, pretty popular. So we're fired up about this event, and so certainly want as big of a crowd as possible out there to support these players that work so hard at the University of South Carolina. Later today, the morning show, the show, we will have that. Also, there's a late night Gamecock show tomorrow night. Matt, the co-host, is in Fort Mill today. And so that's bumped one day. It's normally on Wednesdays, sometimes Tuesdays, sometimes Thursdays. It changes during basketball and baseball season because of games. You know, Alex Jones, the co-host, works for thebigspur.com, and sometimes we need him out at places, or sometimes it's just like nobody's going to be listening during a game. So we try to avoid that, but certainly the late night Gamecock show is always a fun time and a very informative and analytical show right here on the Chief Sports Network. Don't forget Sports Talk tonight, too, with Phil Kornblut from 6 to 8. It streams live each and every night on the Chief Sports app. Lots of Coastal Carolina baseball talk and off-season stuff. And Phil obviously is an iconic broadcaster in this state. And that show has been on since I was a child and always does a great job of everything from high schools to NASCAR to golf to the big schools, football, recruiting, whatever. So encourage everybody to check out everything we've got. Also, ChiefSportsNetwork.com, collegefootballforever.com, SEC Sunday night. I could go on and on and on, but you didn't tune in to listen to a promo, did you? No. Lots going on as far as camps this week and stuff with football. There's visitors in today. Unofficially, there's no official visit weekend this weekend, and then like I said, the next weekend, the 20th, is a pretty big weekend, and we'll get into previewing all of that. A lot of big names, Darius Gray, Samari Matthews among them, coming in to make their official visits on the final official visit weekend scheduled right now of June. It's not to say that somebody may not visit at some point, squeeze them in or whatever. But one interesting thing about Darius Gray, and he's the 5-star offensive lineman from Richmond, Virginia, that South Carolina's been in really good shape for a while, but he scheduled a bunch of visits. You can take unlimited visits now. And so LSU kind of had the crystal ball out there, and then Tennessee, I think, was next. And but LSU doesn't lead anymore. And I think that's good for the Gamecocks. Because maybe it's Tennessee, or was it Michigan? It was one of those two. Somebody told me the other day, maybe not, maybe it was some other school. He's visiting a lot, and I don't have it in front of me. So I think that's good for the Gamecocks because when you have a player that every official visit he makes, that team's ahead, and this happens, but he's been leaning to a certain school for the entire process before. Most of the time, especially if you get that last visit, he kind of figures out why, he liked the team he liked to begin with. So I think that's good. Whereas had LSU had the lead and had kind of survived all the other visits, at some point, if it's LSU, he may shut it down before he gets to South Carolina because all the visits. So, I think different leaders popping up at different times as the lengthy visit process rolls along. Darius Gray, the better it is for Carolina at the end to be that last. It's like the baseball bat game, or whatever. But certainly, like I said, it's weird. So, the report is that somebody else leads for him besides the Gamecocks, and you're like, well, that's not good. I kind of thought it was pretty good just because of the flow of it, if you will. Like I said, he was kind of a window recruit. I felt like, Carolina was in really good shape, but then there's a window to kind of commit it up. And then if your plan is, even if you have a favorite, and your plan is to visit everybody under the sun, that's going to put noise in the system. I don't blame him. I'm not coming down on him. Heck, go check it all out, make a good decision, right? But that favorite team, that team that's been leading for 9 months, it's usually a little ominous, because it's like running through a minefield, metaphorically, of course. Another piece of recruiting news: Joel Combe is announcing July 9th. That'll be during the hiatus of the show and the morning show. I think I'll be around for that. So and this happens too, with the new recruiting calendar, or some semi new recruiting calendar. I guess it's been a few years that all these visits take place in June. The commitments are more spread out. Whereas, like, back in the day, you'd go through January and there were like a slew of signing day decisions, like a slew of them. That's why it made for pretty good TV with ESPN when they got involved and all that. Of course, that ends up being probably the reason the NCAA agreed to move it, because they can't make money off signing day because you're not supposed to talk about it, with the media. And so they were always a pain in the butt to deal with and always trying to manipulate it or whatever. But so they got what they wanted, because now these announcements are spread out over a holiday period. In college football, the week between, like, after June ends and camps end, even in the old way, July was vacation time, the 4th and all that. It really got slow. And the media days happened. You did have the opening and some all-star camps and 7-on-7s, things like that in July, because I was busy in July flying all over hell and creation. Imagine going to the Texas State 7-on-7 in College Station. There aren't very many trees on the Brazos, in College Station, and it's about 99 with 99% humidity out there. But it's fun. I mean, you see a lot of great players. But boy, those old Julys, now it's a little different. I'm a little vacationy during that time period, but there's just not a lot going on as far as commitments and things like that. And then everybody's getting ready for the season, coaching and playing wise. But now you do have commitments as far as the coming off the June, I guess, the June period. They kind of trickle out, so you're going all the way to like July 10th or 11th, which I think is when SEC Media Day starts in Atlanta, with, kind of a train of commits, if you will. And then some kids announce in August. August is really not, now it's a little bit more, there's a little more commits that take place just because of the calendar. But normally August was very slow in the recruiting business because everybody's practicing and playing. I mean, it's real time at that point. But there's a few here and there. Nevertheless, Joel Combe has announcing his decision on July 9th. I really like where the Gamecocks are here. He's 6'2", 190. Had a great visit this past weekend from Marietta, Georgia, Kell High School. 24/7 Sports Composite has him ranked as the number 604 player in the country. Gosh, he's a high 3-star, and there's 600 guys. That's. I got to dig into this 3-star range with the national ranking. Number 47 safety prospect and number 68 overall in the state of Georgia. Now he does visit Tennessee coming up, and he does have Wisconsin this weekend. He had Mizzou on May 30th, Oklahoma State April 25th. Has a stated top 4 of the Vols, Badgers, Gamecocks, and Mizzou Tigers. Mizzou. A lot of Tigers out there. Like this kid, though. Really think it, and he's kind of a true safety. They did talk a little about nickel, but he'll hit you. He's physical. I like him. He's like that tier of player out of Georgia that I think the Gamecocks, that's the ocean they need to be fishing in or swimming in or pool. I don't know. Name your aquatic analogy, if you will, with Joel Combe. But feel good about him as a player. And also where the Gamecocks stand now. Wisconsin, are they going to be able to pull him up north? I don't know. Tennessee, they're formidable. So we'll see what happens with that. Tennessee's also, as I said, I think on an episode last week, they're good in Cobb County, Georgia now. Tennessee is a monster in that part of Atlanta. I don't know what it is. I mean, back in the day, about a few years ago, so well, they got some people helping them or whatever, and maybe they do. I mean, there's tons of there's actually more Auburn fans in Cobb County, at face value when you drive through it. But the Vols have some influence there, and there've been a lot of great players from Cobb County head to Tennessee. So we'll see what happens there. Right now, I think the Gamecocks are in excellent shape for Joel Combe from Kell High School, powerhouse or top talent producer, let's say that, out of Marietta, Georgia, because I don't know how they've been doing team-wise, right? It's one of those other things I don't look up. So we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about, sorry about that. We're going to talk about today. Let's talk about tomorrow. Talk about yesterday. We're going to talk about going on the road in the SEC and kind of how the road games break down this year for the schedule. There's 4 of them. South Carolina actually plays away from Williams-Brice 5 times. So 7 home games this year. But, one is the neutral site game in Atlanta, which I'm getting pretty fired up to go, starting to get those plans going here in about 80 plus days. Gamecocks and Hokies in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I was about to say in the Dome. The Dome is no more, JC. Mercedes-Benz Stadium. For Shane Beamer, since he's been at South Carolina, the road was not kind early. Hardly at all. It was heading into last year. You kind of wondered. That was just something that I guess in his first 3 years that South Carolina wasn't very good at. The first year especially, I mean, they would go on the road and just melt down. There were obviously a road meltdown down at Florida in 2022. That actually ended up being good for the program though, because that forced some change, right? And then what happened the next 2 weeks? I'll trade that. I'll trade getting your butt beat by a bad Florida team or an average Florida team. I'll trade that for beating Tennessee, putting up 63 points on national television, and beating Clemson the following week. Those 2 wins, like recruits and everybody, I mean, those 2 wins meant so much more and helped so much more than a loss like Florida hurt them, and it facilitated change. So sometimes losing like that is not so bad because it kind of forces a lot of soul searching and looking in the mirror. But, 2023, Carolina didn't win at all away from home, including a neutral site game against North Carolina. That was 5 of their 7 losses. At Georgia, competitive for a while. Actually, more than competitive first half. Carolina was beating them 14-3 at the half. Dogs came back. Dogs were good. They came back 24-14, but that was a good game that they played. That was the T.J. Sanders coming out party. And then at Missouri, by that point, the offensive line was Swiss cheese. I'll never forget in that game. Number one, Tyshawn Russell, true freshman, dropped a touchdown on a slant. And then number two, I remember Big Tree got hurt. And I remember looking at his face and looking on there, I was like, this team is in trouble. They went to Texas A&M, had a pretty good start, had their chances certainly in that football game. But the defense, like that Carolina's defense got better. That was the debut of kind of the 3-man front. The defense played good, but then they had a terrible second quarter, gave up like, I think 21 points, lost 30-17. Second time they've lost to an A&M team in College Station, where A&M's gone on to fire their coach. Jimbo Fisher got fired after that. And also they played a road game at Tennessee that was, revenge game, over before it started. Mario Anderson had an 80-yard touchdown in that game, though, so that was good. But 41-20 was the final there. So 0-4, but then something happened, folks. And check this out. 2024, South Carolina was one of the better road teams in college football. Mike Morgan, a lot of people think, well, Mike was just playing to the audience or whatever when he made the case for the Gamecocks to make the playoffs. But road wins, and maybe that's the basketball announcer in him, because road wins in college basketball with the net mean everything. And I think in football, it's arguably harder. There's less games, and the chances of you catching a team on the road, most Power 4 teams play more home games than road games. When you catch a team on the road, you're not going to catch them sleeping, because if you're good, they're going to be up for you, and if they're not as good, and if they are as good, they're going to be up for you. Sometimes you'll get, like in the case of Carolina, Georgia in 2019, one of those noon kickoffs, and upsets happen then. Kentucky, Ole Miss last year, upsets happen then. But it's hard. I think in college basketball, you can have an off shooting night and other team's red hot at your place, and there you go. Now, percentage wise, basketball is harder to win on the road. So maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I just think it's awfully difficult to win road games in the venues that you play at around the SEC, and then there's Clemson. But this team was really good on the road. Of course, beat Kentucky last year, 31-6. That was a early statement win. The next time they hit the road was at Alabama, and they lost by 2. Had their chances in that one. Alabama was a 21-point favorite. Oklahoma was the next road game, 35-9. Blowout. That was a big win. Obviously, they went to Vanderbilt. They won 28-7. Clark Lee called it a 3-phase ass kicking. That was Vanderbilt's worst loss last year. Vanderbilt, man, scary game coming. I keep reading about them. It's probably one of those JC, you're being paranoid things that usually works out in favor of the Gamecocks. Kind of like when I was worried about the special teams a week before the 2022 season. No worries there, but maybe I hope that's it. But and I'm glad that game at Williams-Brice this year is a home game. And a night home game. But last year, Carolina took them out pretty good and in kind of rainy conditions, and wasn't the easiest, smoothest operation up there. Fans, players, coaches, whatever, but beat them pretty good. Survived the kill zone, and so that was good up there. And then, of course, Clemson. The Gamecocks won their second in a row. And this, Shane Beamer is undefeated. Here's one for those that are non-believers of the venue thing. And look, I'm not like coming down on, obviously Clemson is a tough place to play, and it would be upper half of the SEC at least. Because it's loud. You know it. Heck, they're right there. You're very familiar with what that crowd can be like and what it was like when Carolina went up there and won twice in the last couple of years. But Shane Beamer has not lost a non-conference game on the road at South Carolina. Now, neutral site, he absolutely has. Two bowl games and a neutral site game against North Carolina. 1-3 on neutral sites. First year bowl in the Mayo Bowl, then UNC, and then the Gator Bowl, and then the Citrus Bowl. So 1-3. But undefeated, non-conference on the road. There's two Clemson wins and an East Carolina win in his first year. So, but heading into this season, last season, it was kind of an issue. They were 4-10 on the road under him, 2-10 in the Southeastern Conference, with the wins being over Vanderbilt in 2022, and then a Kentucky team that did not have their starting quarterback in 2022. So that Oklahoma game really got more than just that season going. It kind of got the Gamecocks going with this kind of road warrior mentality. Now, we talk all the time about replacing the talent on the team from last year. And, you look on paper and it's there. But one of the things about winning on the road is the mental side of it and the fortitude side of it. And older and more experienced players tend to handle that better. And this roster is going to be skewing young. But you also have a quarterback, and it's especially true with quarterbacks, but you also have a quarterback that's led the Gamecocks to wins on the road, to 4 wins on the road last season. So that's going to help. And, Lenora Sellers last year didn't flinch. I mean, Kentucky early on, he faced some adversity. That was a back and forth game. And he just hung in there and completed passes. Some mistakes were made at Alabama, obviously, but with the interceptions, fumbles. But man, he was clutch. That 4th and 10 touchdown at Alabama that cut it to 14-7. I think that, I know the Oklahoma game's kind of when the winning started, but that play at that point, before that play, and keep in mind there was a minute and some change left in the first half. Great play call by Dowell Loggins, by the way. If it's 14-0 at that point, Carolina counting Ole Miss in its last. Well, all right, let's go back. Let's count the second half against LSU too. So they're 20-9 there, and then 20, 27, 47, 12. Carolina had been outscored 61-12. Second half against LSU, whole game against Ole Miss. And then to that point against Alabama, against SEC competition. No, things were not going well at that point in time. And then that happened, and it was a hell of a game for the rest of the time. They lost, but I think that showed them as a 21-point underdog they could play with anybody in the country. Sometimes, again, there you go, silver linings and a loss right there for the Gamecocks. But, he stayed cool there, cool at Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, Houdini plays started coming out, on the road. And then there's Clemson, where in that environment, he absolutely, decimated the Tigers defense and probably caused a firing of defensive coordinators by Dabo Swinney. So he's been through it. And so I don't expect him to flinch this coming year. You hope South Carolina's good on defense. You still have Dylan Stewart that can wreck things. I think one of the big talking points with him this year is, are they going to call holding? Right? Because they probably could have a lot more. But I think that, going into these environments this year with a quarterback like that can kind of counterbalance some of the youth elsewhere with this football team. So let's look at it. So what's the first game on the road? Missouri, the Mayor's Cup. And I felt this way about the Kentucky game this past year, but I was wrong, because much like the Missouri, it was in the kind of the same November-ish home game area that Missouri was. A week later, it was the week before they played Clemson in 2023, the Darude game. By the way, that game really paid off recruiting-wise, I think. Again, silver linings, something bad that season. But Carolina held on, won 17-14. It was a great back and forth game, defensive struggle. Mark Stoops said it was the toughest loss he'd ever taken. And so then I'm looking at the 2024 schedule going, oh man, Carolina's got to go up there. They got all these D linemen. It's right, instead of being at the end, it's at the beginning. They're going to be healthy and ready to go. And then heading in, they didn't, I don't even think they played the last quarter of their game against Southern Miss because of weather. There was a reason Kentucky was a 9.5 point favorite, but the Gamecocks survived. So I feel the same way, and hopefully I'll continue to feel this way and be wrong about this Missouri game. Now, it's not super early, it's game 4, but I think it's the conference opener for them. And Eli Drinkwitz thinks it's his birthright to beat South Carolina. And I don't mind that, dude. I'm not an Eli hater. They've got a really good, hey, they kind of, where have you heard this before? Kentucky last year. And I'm not saying the bottom's going to fall out for Missouri like it did for Kentucky this season. But, they've got a really good D line. It's out there. South Carolina's won there twice since Mizzou came into the SEC. Once was that great comeback led by Connor Shaw, where Missouri, ranked number 5, dunked the field goal in 13. And then in 17, game 2. And there was another scary spot on the schedule because you open with NC State, and that was a big win on a neutral site. And then you don't get to come home. You got to go out to Mizzou, and they'd scored like 80 points. Josh Heupel was their offensive coordinator, and it looked scary in the first. And they got off to a good start. I think they were up 10-0. Then Deebo Samuel happened, and Jake Bentley played well, and the defense was awesome. And, Will Muschamp was really good at scheming up, and he remains that way at Georgia, at scheming up Josh Heupel. Georgia hadn't had problems with Tennessee Volunteers since Josh Heupel's been there. And so there's something that Will and those folks know about stopping that offense. And Drew Lock was the quarterback. He's a little inaccurate and stuff, but a pretty good Missouri team nonetheless. And then disaster continued to strike. 19 inexcusable play call down there with Helinski. I think they're on the 3, and he throws a 100-yard pick 6 when they had finally gotten momentum back. That was the Kelly Bryant team. That coach got fired, Barry Odom, at the end of the year, but beat Carolina by 20. The next time they played was 2021. I think that was one of the worst losses that year because Missouri's defense was historically bad, and Carolina couldn't get any 250 yards on offense or something. It just, after they beat Florida the week before, it shows you another reason why the madness of the first offensive coordinator Beamer had here was just unexplainable. And Carolina had an early lead, so that was bad. Lost 31-28. If it weren't for some defensive heroics, that score would have been much worse. Whew. And then 34-12, mentioned that game in 2023. But going out to Missouri, the Mayor's Cup's on the line again. Everybody in the country knows what happened last season. Everybody in Columbia, Missouri knows it's going to be a tough game. The next one is a Bear. Obviously, and I heard or read, and I haven't seen it like actually reported, but that the SEC will release the TV windows. Now, this is one, folks, that you may hope that is a noon or 3 because it's at LSU. And outside of South, LSU has a decided advantage at night, much like the Gamecocks do right now, especially with SEC games. So you may be hoping that, hey, well, sneak this one. And I don't know what other games are on the schedule. My guess is it's prime time because everybody's probably sitting there looking at the schedule going, oh, they could both be in the top 10 at the time. Baton Rouge is a tough place to win. Ironically, it's the only setting where Carolina's beaten LSU since joining the SEC. That was way back in 1994. Brad Scott's first year. Steve Tannehill as a quarterback. Blake Williamson played some in that game at QB. It was raining. LSU wasn't all that good at the time. Gamecocks won 18-17 by a single point. So it's been a struggle. And last time they went to Baton Rouge, I believe, was 2020. Lost 52-24 during COVID. And that was a game heading in. LSU was struggling. And some people thought Carolina would win it. No. How about no? No. Coach O slammed the door on the Gamecocks. And that was kind of a beginning of the end thing with the Muschamp era. Steve Spurrier's last game as the Gamecocks head coach, was a 45-24 loss in 2015. I mean, it's been tough going down there and winning. Um, and so that's the next road game. Then you got two Titanic home games, Oklahoma and Alabama. Sitting around 10, 15, 15, let's just say 20 years ago, you said, well, hey, guess what? In 2025, South Carolina's going to play at LSU and then Oklahoma at home and then Alabama at home. I would have been like, man, that's brutal. Now it's just like, well, it's just life in the SEC. It's still a brutal stretch. But after that, the Gamecocks go to Ole Miss. Now, Ole Miss, check this out. It's very interesting. The games that these two teams have played out in Oxford are normally a bit of a shootout. I would say lots of the time it's a shootout, and it's normally very competitive and close. Last went to Oxford in 2020, Kiffin's first year, Muschamp's last game, 59-42. The Gamecocks had a 42-38 lead. They were not stopping Ole Miss at all that night as a clipboard game. But Kevin Harris ran all over them, and the Gamecocks were kind of back and forth until Ole Miss pulled away at the end. Nobody will ever forget the 19 game. Big crowd of Gamecocks out there simply because the Gamecocks hadn't been to Ole Miss in a long time. Carolina won a shootout 48-44. Carolina got up big. This is when Matt Luke was the head coach of the Rebels. Carolina gets up big. Ole Miss rallies. I remember sitting there watching this game, and Ole Miss is sitting there with a 10-point lead, 44-34. And I'm like, God, how did they blow this? Everybody got hurt on defense that day. Tyson Williams was killing it and then broke his arm. Unbelievable. This is 2018. If I said 19, I apologize. And then they found a way. Mon Denson had a big run. Jake Bentley, 48-44 Gamecocks. That was one of the games Debo Samuel took the opening kickoff back. But you look back, so 59-42, 48-44. Before that, it was 2008. I was actually at this one. I call this the Jason Barnes game because he had a great game with Chris Smelly at quarterback, Steve Spurrier. This is one of the best wins that 08 team, which wasn't very good, had, 31-24 over a good Houston Nutt-led Ole Miss team that I think ended up winning the Cotton Bowl that year. But that game was out in Oxford, and the Gamecocks won it. Had a great time with Wild Bill Gunner and my friend, the late, great John Manning Vhorn, who unfortunately passed away in 2014. He got on a roll at the craps table at the Grand in Tunica that was epic. There were four people. It was four people deep. He had his Gamecock stuff on. People were doing the Gamecocks cheer. We got free steak after that. It was an amazing trip and an amazing win for Steve Spurrier and the Gamecocks. Prior to that, there was a game. Eli Manning was there. It was one of the worst. You can ask John Strickland. He was on this team. One of the worst calls ever. This phantom safety. Ole Miss got up like 43-14, and the Dondrell Pinkins, Matthew Thomas, they started coming back, right? And it ended up being 43-40. And the safety ended up being a factor at the end. Pinkins was like 3 yards out of the end zone. They called a safety. Didn't have replay at the time. I don't even know if that's replayable or challengeable now. And then even in 1998, during Brad Scott's last season, it was a 33-28 Rebels win in Oxford. But in that game, Brad Scott had he was going to play like a surprise, I guess, on Ole Miss. And came out with the fast break offense because they had amazingly tried to go to this ground game Chuck Reedy offense or whatever that was a disaster that season and directly led to the 1-10 firing year. But they played them pretty close. It was 33-28 was the final. Or was that 30-28? Kentucky was the same way that year. It was really close. But Ole Miss pulled it out, but the Gamecocks went up and down the field. So they hadn't played Ole Miss in Oxford very often, but just every time it seems it's like this back and forth crazy game with a lot of drama. I mean, there's not really one game you can point to where they've played. I think Brad Scott, unfortunately, and I'm not being funny at all here, so please don't take it that way. I think Brad Scott's wife Daryl fell in the bleachers that game, and that's when she kind of hurt her ankle or broke her ankle or something back in '98. Crazy, right? So you got that, you've got the Phantom safety, you've got the Jason Barnes game, an improbable win by Steve Spurrier and my buddy got on a roll at the craps table. You've got the 48-44 with Muschamp and the daggum, opening kickoff by Debo for the TD. And that probably led to Matt Luke getting fired as the head coach at Ole Miss because they were 5-7 that year. It was a game they really needed. And then everybody got hurt on defense. And then the 59-42 game out there with Kiffin, the clipboard, and that's like Muschamp's last game. So tons of significant games. Is Ole Miss a tough place to win? I couldn't say it's tougher than the two I mentioned. And that's no offense to them. It's a good crowd. It's tough to win everywhere in the league. They're going to have a great offense. Obviously, you're supposed to bring your defense on the road. It's tough to stop those guys. I love Austin Simmons. By the time Carolina gets to that football game, though, you're going to know a lot about both sides. So I don't know how scary it is or not at this point. And then the grand finale on the road this year is a place Carolina's never won. Kyle Field, Texas A&M, late mid-November. I think last time this game was in this spot was in 19. Carolina lost 30-6. They were within striking distance for a while, and then A&M pulled away. And then the bad thing about 19 was, good God, it was like that was loss number 7, and then they had an open date, the rare open date before Clemson. Talk about a death march. Clemson, obviously, really good national runner-up that year, 38-3. After Carolina had 2 weeks to think about it, oh man, that was just bad. And I talked to some people that were on that staff, and they're like, we're just ready to, we're gonna go out here and play our tails off, but nobody's gonna be sad to see this season end. So we got to figure out what to do. But yeah, so that was it. So ranking the toughness of the road games, and I'm gonna probably use. It's probably like Captain Obvious, but in the comments, if you have a different opinion or you want to rank them in order, certainly would appreciate that. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel right here on Chief Sports South Carolina on YouTube. I'm LSU 1, A&M 2, Missouri 3, Ole Miss 4. And I'm going to say this. Historically, I wouldn't sit there and say that Missouri has this superior atmosphere to Ole Miss. In fact, I don't believe it because the atmosphere at Missouri can be downright terrible at times. But they're going to be ready for that game. There's a lot of Missouri fans that think South Carolina is like their rival. Now, Missouri does play their actual rival, Kansas, earlier in the year, which if I'm Eli Drinkwitz, that's a scary game for me. But they have a lot of home games to start the year, another favorable schedule for them. They probably will be undefeated and ranked, I would guess. And it's a revenge game. And Eli Drinkwitz has, owned the Gamecocks really for all but the first half last season. Since was at App State. So I guess he was mad about that 2017 NC State game where he was the OC and put up 504 yards, yet they lost to the Gamecocks in the opener. Nevertheless. All right, so there you have it. There's my ranking of toughest road games, 1 through 4, for South Carolina in 2025. I think Carolina is, there are some concerns across the roster about this roster being young, if they're going to be road warriors like they were last year. Like last year was one of the best seasons I can remember on the road, even though they weren't undefeated. I mean, the only loss was a 2-point loss at Bama. And you survived a landmine-filled game with Vanderbilt. You beat Clemson on the road. You whipped Kentucky. I mean, it wasn't murderers row. Beat Oklahoma and Norman. It wasn't murderers row. The best two teams were Clemson and Bama by a good margin. And then Vandy, and then Oklahoma, and then Kentucky. And yes, I do think Vanderbilt was a better team than Oklahoma last year. But, out in Norman, it's the cathedral of college football, right? So every win you can get out there, you take it. All right. Tune into the morning show, the show. Don't forget thebigspur.com. subscribe. We're having a 50% off special on annual VIP memberships right now. You get all the recruiting scoop. Also, if you pay full price monthly or annually and you're not a member, you can get Paramount Plus for free. Got to pay in full for that, but it's $9.95 a month, $100 a year. If you pay annually, save a couple of dollars, whatever. All right, this has been Coffee with JC Shurburtt. Holla at you soon.